All right, this is the glute hamstring raise, or the glute ham gastroc raise. The reason that they call it that is because it works the entire posterior chain from the lower back, the glutes, the hamstrings, and then the calves when done properly. The only way to do this exercise is to have a dedicated glute hamstring bench, or GHR is what we often refer them to. It's got a rounded pad so that your thighs can roll against it, so you can do the knee flexion phase of this exercise. That's what separates this from a back extension. All right, there's a couple ways you can do this. One just overloads the hamstrings. One incorporates the lower back, the glutes, and the hamstrings as well. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. It's important that the bench, again, has that rounded pad so that you can pivot against it, and that you set it up properly so that you're in the correct position when you do the exercise. You want your mid-thigh to be on top of the pad with your knees behind the pad. Now, the closer your knees get to the pad, the harder it's going to be. The further back they go, the easier it's going to be. Also, if you adjust the back of the bench higher, it's going to be more difficult, and if you adjust the back of the bench lower, it's going to be a lot easier. So there's different ways you can set up and adjust the glute hamstring raise to get a little bit of variance in the loading. There are also some floor variations or some home variations. There's many different variations of the bench, but what makes this unique is the rounded pad, which allows you to do the exercise properly. Now, to do the glute ham raise, you're going to get into the bench, slide your shins between these pads. You want your knees totally straight, all right? And your body's going to be out over the pad. Now, I'm going to start by flexing my hips and hanging upside down. The movement begins with a back extension. Once I get my back parallel to the ground, I'm going to drive my toes into the toe plate, and I'm going to roll up and flex the knees, so I'm going to finish out the movement with knee flexion. So this works both aspects of the hamstrings, the hip extension function as well as the knee flexion. All right, so to do the exercise, I'm going to start out down here. You're going to drive up, dig the toes into the toe plate, and finish with the knee curl. And then take it back down so that the knees are fully extended. And that is a properly performed glute ham or glute ham gastroc raise. Now, there is a variation you see sometimes without the hip extension, where you start with the body parallel to the ground and you just do the knee flexion, and that becomes a lot more stress on the hamstrings. So that does change it up a little bit, but I like to do this with hip extension function first so that we're working the entire posterior chain. Now, there are some different ways to overload the movement. You could hold a weight at your chest, okay, an increasingly heavier weight, or if your bench allows it, there are some hooks down here I can attach bands to, like jump stretch bands or whatever, and place over my neck and do the raise against the bands. So that's another way to do it. There is a variation if the glute hamstring raise is difficult. You can attach a band back here behind the foot plate, put it over your neck, and the band can assist you coming up. So there are many different ways that you can play with the exercise to make it easier or harder, but that is basically your glute hamstring raise.